I'm George Mason, host of Good God, conversations that matter about faith and public life. My guest is Gordon Keith, radio personality and writer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he'll be talking about his experiences of grief and the loss of his parents and the ways he has found meaning through it. Welcome to Good God, conversations that matter about faith and public life. I'm joined today by Gordon Keith, who is a local radio personality that many of you know through The Ticket, the morning show. 24 years at The Ticket and 22 with the morning show. And also many of you might know him through his writings in the Dallas Morning News. I've known him through some personal relationship and conversation we've had occasionally through the years. But also because we grew up in Baptist life at different times, and his dad was a Baptist pastor. But Gordon, it's wonderful to have you on the program.
Oh man, it's my pleasure.
And to talk about things that you and I know we both share interest in, but maybe other people don't know. They probably would expect it of me,
right.
Maybe not so much of you.
They probably associate church with you.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably right. But actually, I have a little bit of sports in my background too. Probably.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Probably a little more than you do, as a matter of fact.
Much more than I do, yes.
Yeah, you know, one time, I probably should tell everybody this story. I was sitting with your dad at lunch, and he was helping us with a capital campaign at the time. Because after he was a pastor, he helped churches raise money and that sort of thing. And so we were sitting there, and he was talking about you, and Mickey Mantle had just died. And I'd actually gone to Mickey Mantle's funeral because I grew up in New York, and I was a baseball fan, and as a kid, so I thought, oh, it's just down the street, I'm going to do this.
Right.
And it was fun. And he looked at me and he said, you know, my son on sports radio, he says to me, Dad, who's Mickey Mantle?
Right.
And like, you know, and people wouldn't understand, but you know, maybe they would because you're sort of the funny guy on the show and that kind of thing, and views in the news and all. It
is amazing that I've made a career in sports radio, having little interest in sports, and I never intended to get in radio. I just kind of started it when I was 21. I think I took an internship with The Ticket right before it went on the air, and the thing just kind of kept going and kept going. I said, well, this is a great job, and it really is like. You know, and certainly you have a ministry. I would say that, you know, The Ticket is like serves this function in our community. It's so strange. I mean, people will come up to you and say the most meaningful and touching things when we're doing events and meeting listeners. You know, they'll come up to you and say, you know, I mean, some of them will have tears in their eyes saying, you guys have been part of my mornings and part of my life for 20 years. They'll say things like, my wife and I used to listen to you when she was in dialysis.
Oh my goodness.
And you know, they've lost someone, but they bond over this. And a lot of, I had someone just recently, a couple weeks ago, sent me a beautiful long touching email about how I want to thank you guys because I don't know how to talk to my dad.
Yeah.
But one thing we could always talk about was you guys.
Yeah.
I'm such a sap, you can tell.
Well, so here's the emotion that's coming up now has to do somewhat also with your sense of this being touched by people and they're being touched at sensitive moments of their lives.
Right.
Which is something you've been going through as well for a period of time now. We talked about your dad, but you lost your mom and dad in a short period of time from each other over the course of the last couple of years, I guess.
Yeah, they 8 months apart, they passed away.
Right.
And, you know, and so the past few years of mine, my father passed away about 2 years ago, and my mom 8 months before that. So I spent, you know, a good chunk of my time, you know, caring for them.
Right.
And it was very, very traumatic, you know, and it's like, you know, I just wish that after my mom passed that my dad and I had a chance to recover a little bit. But we were steeped in his own treatment for cancer at the time. My mom also died of cancer. And it was just the amount of trauma that you see, that you have to go through in caring for parents is really amazing. And, you know, I thought it was strange how people would come up to me and say, you know, I really this is going to sound like I'm bragging about myself, but I actually have a point here.
Okay.
They say, I really admire you for taking care of your parents the way you do. I don't think I could do that. And to me, quite honestly, it didn't occur to me that you could get home health care or anything like that. I mean, it was like I didn't think about it. I wasn't aware this was an option.
Right.
But I took care of them, and when you do those things for your parents, when you see that circle of life in which you have to care for them, attendant to their needs in the way that they attended to you as an infant, right. When you have to wash them and you have to help them go to the bathroom and all of these hallmarks of humanity,
right.
It really, it affects you. You feel for them in ways, but it gives you a sense, as traumatic as it was for me, to have to care for them and see them go downhill. And my father was very much a Superman to me. Larger than life, incredibly intelligent man, big football player guy. To see him go down and to see him pass away, it is so foundationally shattering to a person. But I did step away from that going, I did good. I did the right thing, and I took care of them. And this is the way it's supposed to be. And we farmed out health care and death. We farmed out death in the way that we didn't. Nowhere in human history have we done like we've done in the past 100 years, where people die in hospitals now and and all that. And
even our death rituals, where we now mostly have cremation or memorial services, and we don't really want to be with the body and things of that nature. I understand there are pluses and minuses to all of those things, but there was a time when we, as a community and families, would let life stop. The funeral coach would go by in the parade of cars, and men would take their hats off, and people would stop on the sidewalk, or the church bell would ring, and everyone would say, someone has died. And there would be a communal sense of grieving that would take place, and taking stock of life and death and the meaning of it and all of that, just in the normal course of things. And now, as a pastor, I got to tell you, people will schedule memorial services for months after the person has died, because it's much more convenient for family to come in out of town.
Right.
And, I had this trip planned, and so, and I think, oh my goodness, what is the significance of this shift that's happened?
Yeah, it is strange how because it's so unpleasant to have to think about death and contemplate it, and we found these ways to kind of marginalize death, when death is the very thing that gives our lives meaning in some sense, because we
having
are these creatures that we're so finite, but we have these minds. It's the old thing, we have angel minds, but we're in a goat's body, and that is the very thing that makes us distinct from every other creature. That's the thing that makes us need a relationship with God, is because we have a God-like mind that can project itself beyond our own death. And so when we don't see those that are close to us die and spend the time to contemplate what death means, and what do I want out of my life, and how much time do I fritter away in my life doing stuff I either don't want to do or just spent life in amusement. I think really we're so distracted by amusement now to prevent us from thinking and contemplating about harder things that are very uncomfortable. So
this from an entertainer.
From an entertainer, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And there is certainly a place for entertainment.
Sure.
Like I told you, the going to your wife, going to dialysis with you, and y'all listening to something funny on the way. That's good.
Right. Yeah.
But to constantly stay on our devices and never do anything.
Sure.
It's, David Foster Wallace said, we're just going to amuse ourselves to death, and there's something to that. Is that we're just. When we only have a limited amount of life and we spend it all on this penalty kill of doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't have meaning.
So you threw yourself into caring for your parents, and that was a meaningful part for which you have no regrets. But then after they were gone, that was a whole new phase for you.
Exactly, and I'm still in it. I'm still in this. I was just devastated and laid low by depression. And I don't know whether that is a product of what I witnessed or a product of my own particular sensitivity. But it really, knocked me down in a way that I'm still trying to get up from. In a lot of ways, it's the concept of rebirth, because you do have to rise up if you're going to live at all. And it refocused my own mind and refocused my own idea of what I want out of life. And it also reminded me of how late on the play clock I have now. I'm in my 40s, I'm not young. And if I'm going to do the things I want to do, I need to get started at it, but it's very hard.
Yeah.
But when your parents die, are either of your parents still alive?
One, yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Well, when you have that last one die and you're, there's
no
one on the vanguard anymore.
Right.
You're the next in line to die. It affected me greatly.
So, looking back on it, I think you've written about, talked about how this experience has caused you to want to live more simply, for instance, and focused you a little more about more meaningful things that you would do without having gone through that real sense of grief. Would you have been able to get to that place? In other words, sometimes the hardest things that we go through are things that we come on the other side and say, maybe I needed to go through that in order to arrive here.
Right. This goes back to that thing I was talking about. Our one great human superpower is ascribing meaning to things. Yeah. And I know that here with my parents' death, I can do one of two things. I can either crumble and fall and not rebuild, or I know I'm going to crumble and fall. You're guaranteed to have to tear down some part of yourself. Some part's going to get torn down when your parents die. How do you rebuild it, and what do you rebuild it, and what does it look like? Could I have come to that through some other way? Probably. I think our tragedies are the things that make us. My whole career, being a funny kid, was born out of pain. This was because I was not handsome. I was not an athlete. My brother was that. My older brother was. When you're a younger brother, you live life in response to someone. My brother had declared territories, and so how was I going to be special? I wanted to be special, right? And so I started being funny, and you have somebody who makes fun of you on the schoolyard, a bully, so painful, so traumatic. Well, I'm going to be more quick-witted, so then I'm going to develop this thing of me. Right. It's almost like our personalities are basically a response to our suffering and our tragedies and our pain, and they're adaptations to that. What we are our adaptations to suffering and the things that forged us.
Beautiful. Well, I think it would be well for us to explore something about your writing experience and how that both had to stop for a while for you, and how the prospect of doing that again is still before you, but is part of the redemption of this whole experience as well. So let's explore that in just a few moments when we come back.
The North Texas Food Bank is a local nonprofit focused on hunger relief. Right here in North Texas, there are more than 800,000 food insecure people. That means these folks don't always know when or from where their next healthy meal may come. Each day, the North Texas Food Bank Feeding Network provides access to more than 190,000 meals for hungry children, seniors, and families. While the food bank is making great strides to meet the need for food assistance, much work remains to be done to ensure that all hungry neighbors are fed. You can get involved and ensure that hungry kids are able to access the nutrition they need to thrive. Donate food. Healthy food items like peanut butter and canned tuna are always appreciated. Donate funds. Did you know when you donate $1, it provides access to 3 meals? Donate your time. Roll up your sleeves and come volunteer with the North Texas Food Bank. Donate your voice. Tell our elected officials that the issue of hunger matters. Visit ntfb.org to get involved. Good God with George Mason salutes the vital services provided to our community by the North Texas Food Bank.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gordon, we were talking about your writing as being something that sort of pulled you out of one medium and put you into another. And I got a first-hand experience of that, actually, because...
That's right. You were a star of one of my columns.
Well, and I appreciate you nominating me for Texan of the Year following the Ebola incident and all the things that took place there. But you were an award-winning writer for the Dallas Morning News, and people really enjoyed your column, and we can talk more about what the meaning of that was. But going back to your grief, you needed to stop for a while. You needed to say,
Right.
let me just collect typewriters for a while.
Right, yeah.
How's that collection going?
It
by
was
the way?
very. It's a collection I need to get rid of. Is what needs to happen. Yeah,
You and Tom Hanks, by the way, both.
I know it. He's a big typewriter collector.
You have that going for you.
I know, it's such a strange thing. Yeah, I always liked those. And it's very interesting, the things that I like to collect, typewriters, I got into pens, nice fountain pens for a while. They're all surrounding writing,
Right.
And I find that I do those things when I'm avoiding writing. I always do some kind of ancillary thing related to writing.
Right.
But yeah, I stopped for a while, and part of it was that my own, a lot of it with writing, and I need to get back to it, and I have not fully jumped into it. When my parents got sick and I was taking care of them, I found that I just didn't want to write, and I was in a situation where I had the radio job where I didn't have to write, and so I stopped doing it. And in a lot of ways, I feel that was really a mistake because of all the things that I've done, and I've done radio and a little bit of TV, but the thing that has always meant the most to me is writing. It's and my writing tended to always be kind of serious writing. I've done humor columns before too, but when I started the morning news stuff, it just seemed like the more stuff I was writing about was kind of serious stuff.
Right.
And I got so much great response from those columns.
And why do you think? What was the secret to it that really touched people?
I think it was vulnerability.
There
I
it
think
is.
that I was I would tell stories about my life that they're not glamorous or anything. It was just paying attention to an interaction or something that had happened to me, and so there would kind of be about life. And if you're talking vulnerably, people will listen to you. If you are up on a podium and trying to prove someone wrong, or you see this in political columns and so on, people can tune you out so easily. They can dismiss you because that's a liberal columnist, that's a conservative columnist, and they don't listen to you. But when you're just a person who's kind of defies label, and you just start off talking in a way that is conversational and is telling a story, you get in the side door of someone, and it's amazing to me how if you bypass the head and go for the heart, you can actually talk to people.
Right.
And people will listen to what you're saying, what you're writing
Preaching
about.
is this way too, I think. It's you can't talk anybody into the faith. You can't just convince them. There has to be that human connection, that sense of being moved and feeling that this is raw. The sports writer Red Smith, somebody apparently asked him what's the secret of good writing, and he says, well, this is pretty simple. You just open up a vein and start to write.
And start to bleed,
Start to bleed, and that's pretty much what I think you're talking about. We have why is it that the most popular TED Talk maybe ever is Brene Brown, who talked about the secret of vulnerability and the importance of that in healing our human hurts and in bringing our communities together. So I think you hit on a nerve there, but it also probably says why you had to take a pause for a while.
Right, because one of the things that was really hard about writing to me, a couple things were, one is even though people would come up to me sometimes and go, oh man, I liked your column about this or that, you write so naturally. And I think, boy, it certainly doesn't feel natural because I go over every word, and everything is balanced and measured. Things have to have rhythm and a certain kind of poetry and feel and texture to them, and it feels like so much heavy lifting. And I suffer from something that I think most every writer does. Every writer is convinced that it's easy for all the other writers.
Right, exactly.
And I feel like a fraud, and I feel like, God, why is this so taxing for me?
Sure.
When everyone else seems to be able to write easily, but I don't write easily. I happen to be a person who it takes me a long time to come up with 800 words that I like enough, and to know that I'm sharing the parts of the story that I need to share and not extraneous things, and I'm picking the one detail that'll represent 100 details, because as a writer, you have one of the greatest allies you have is the reader's mind.
Yeah.
Because it will populate the details of something, and they will talk about, man, you painted such a great scene.
Right.
And I say, look at it again, and I only put 2 sentences there, but your mind filled this out into an entire scene based on your own experience. So that's how writing can be.
Well, I go through this in preaching. People will come to me, Gordon, and say, after a sermon, sometimes in the narthex, sometimes days later, and they'll talk to me, here's what really meant something to me. When you said this, and I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, okay, I don't think I said that. I don't remember any way in which I could have possibly communicated that to you.
But that's what they took
That's
from
what they took from it. Because as you say, this is not a monologue. This is not just an essay being put out there into the air. It's really a communication of souls. And we have this sense that there's actually a communicator connecting us, right?
Right.
That there is this mystery of communication, this mystery of life that is drawing us to each other. And in our Christian experience, we call that the Holy Spirit. And I think you've actually talked about this as a calling for you.
Right.
And you use that word, which is sort of not so much borrowed from religious life. It's
the association people
It's an
have
association,
with it.
right? But you think about your ministry in writing. I've heard you use that phrase. What do you mean by that?
This was a realization that I came to at some point during the long run of the radio show. Was I used to think that what I did was frivolous, and I used to think it was just fluff in life. And I always wondered when I would do something serious. And then I came to appreciate through many listener interactions that what we did on the radio show was a ministry. And that opened my idea up to, well, kind of all the work we do is our ministry in some sense, and it means something to people. And then when I started writing the column, I started seeing the impact that it was having on people and the impact it was having on me in conversation with those people. And I realized, this is absolutely every bit as much of a ministry as, I'm not saying as in well executed.
We're all
thing,
done it.
But
we're all involved in
it's every much as ministry as my father's ministry was, as much as yours is.
Right.
This is my particular kind. It's
you
not
have
the
your
same
own
kind.
congregation in a sense.
Exactly.
Right.
And that became so meaningful to me, because I do feel it's my calling. And the spiritual tumult that I experience even today when I'm not actively writing is because I'm not answering my calling, and I know that, and that eats at me.
Right.
And I think most people in the world, if they would start thinking along those lines of, what is my calling and why aren't I doing it if I'm not? And look at the ways that it eats at you that you're not doing what you feel you should be doing.
Right.
Each person has something that they should be doing. Right. This is a way of thinking, right? In religious terms, we do talk about, God has a purpose for us and a calling. But even secular people, if they would just, you can even leave God out of it if you're uncomfortable with the term. Think of it that way, and you would realize how much better you would feel if you found out what your calling was and walked that way.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many things get settled when you're doing the thing you're supposed to be doing.
Sounds like you're getting close again.
I am. Every interaction like this nudges me a little bit closer.
Right.
But
I think there's an awful lot of people ready to read you again and eager for that, and because it's not just because another writer has made a contribution, but because of the way you've done that and the ministry it is to people. So thank you for it.
Oh man, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, right.
It's one of these win-wins that I wonder why I don't avail myself of it. If it helps other people and helps me, why am I not doing it?
Right.
And part of it is this idea of sin. And once again, you can understand it religiously or understand it otherwise, but it's that I obviously don't feel worthy enough for salvation. And when I don't like myself enough that I don't avail myself of salvation, that's a problem that needs to be addressed.
And yet the paradox of that in faith is really remarkable too, because it's precisely at the moment when you don't feel worthy that you are most in touch with God's grace and the sense of okay, this is now when I realize I need to depend upon someone else. I need to depend upon God.
And that's so hard for people. I
Yeah.
saw it with my grandmother. She lived with my parents where she died. And when here she is at the end of her life, 93 years of age, and the thing that upset her the most was she would say, I don't know why I'm still here. I'm not of use to anyone.
Of
and
use.
we would say, Grandma, you've spent your whole life serving other people. Let us take care.
Right.
But I'm not useful.
Right.
And this idea, and then it hit me, that one of the most fundamental things of a human being is to feel utility.
Yeah, yeah.
And so how can I be of use? If you would answer that, then you found the key to the door of heaven.
Well, I think most people who just listen to you on the morning show probably would be amazed at this kind of a conversation. Now, you guys talk about religion and church and faith
Right.
some now and then, but normally it's a jab here or there.
Right.
But here's a format, both in your writing and in these kinds of conversations, that really opens a window to your soul, and I think communicates an awful lot to other people as well. Somehow, Gordon, you have retained an awful lot of how you grew up, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Right, yeah. The thing I thought I was rebelling against becomes the thing that actually has grown and sprouted so many wings inside of me,
Right.
Because religion and philosophy are these passions of mine, and the reason they are is because I'm a human being.
Right.
And I think we all have that hunger for meaning, and I think the world would do well to return back to an idea of the old idea that religion can provide meaning over here in the West. I would love to see us move back towards that, and a little bit away from this idea that we're going to try to satisfy spiritual conditions with tools of materialism or
Exactly.
tools of accomplishment.
That reminds me of the time we were visiting in my study for the article you were doing on following the Ebola crisis, and we were sitting in a study that is very unlike the environment we're in right here. You referred to it as kind of a funeral home, funeral parlor kind of place, and we had water on the thing there, and some tissue for people's tears. And this is sort of a pastor's office, right?
Right.
But so we're going on in this conversation, and you're talking in this article, and actually you come to the end of the piece, and you say how you resisted drinking any of that water because you didn't really want to give into that funeral parlor sort of environment and all of that. But as you walked out, you ended the piece by saying, it made me want to go find my childhood Bible and open it up to John 4:14. Done, over,
Right.
And now the reader is sitting there thinking, and I got to be honest, I was too, even though I'm supposed to memorize the whole Bible. I had to go look it up, and I knew the story, and it's Jesus, of course, with the Samaritan woman at the well, and Jesus is saying, the water I give you to drink is eternal water for eternal life, and will make you never thirst again.
Right.
And I think, Gordon, that's the water.
I'll finally drink with you on this. Yes.
That's the water we're talking about.
That's right.
And God bless you for all you do and for the meaning that this conversation has made in this day. Appreciate you.
Thank you, George, as always.
Okay, terrific.
Anytime.
Okay, bye-bye.